everyone. Welcome to my June wrap-up. I managed to read 7 books this month. Well, that's a lie. I read 5 books and then I had 2 DNFs. So let's go ahead and get the DNFs out of the way. A lot of these books that I read this month were NetGalley arcs. I had a lot of them that I needed to catch up on, so that's mainly what I read this month. So let's go ahead and get the 2 DNFs out of the way first. The first one was The Paris Widow, and this one I shouldn't have requested in the first place because, I don't know, when I reread the synopsis before reading it, I realized from the beginning it wasn't going to be my type of book, but I tried it since I already had a copy, and after a few chapters I was just like, yeah, this is not for me. So this is about a woman who travels to Paris with her husband, and then there's like an explosion. I think it was like a terrorist attack or something, I don't know. And she's worried that her husband isn't safe, and he was killed, but as she tries to discover what happened, she realizes that her husband has like this entire back history that she knows nothing about, that he wasn't quite who she thought her husband was. But I don't know, it seemed more of like those type of thrillers where you have like heists, or you have terrorist attacks, or you have like national security problems, or it seems like that type of thriller, which is just not my thing, and I just couldn't get into it. I just didn't care, so I went ahead and DNF'd this one. The next DNF pains me to my very soul, and it's The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley. To be fair, I'm not one of these women who have read Lucy Foley and loved all of her other books, and then I'm disappointed that this one didn't work out, because this is actually my first Lucy Foley book that I've ever read, but I just did not like it. And I can be a bit of a prude sometimes, and it had a lot of the F word and a couple of the C words, and everybody was just thinking and talking about sex all the time, and none of the characters were likable. The storyline was kind of boring and slow, and I don't know, I liked the setting. There was like this new resort hotel thing that they're building out in the woods, and so I liked the atmosphere and I liked the setting, but it wasn't enough to continue to intrigue me to the point where I wanted to read it. I just couldn't care. So unfortunately, this was a DNF, which was so sad because I was so excited for this one, and the cover's beautiful and it sounded really good, but it just wasn't working for me. But I'm still gonna try out this author's other works, especially because I already own 2 of them. I own The Paris Apartment and The Guest List. So hopefully I'll get to them soon, and hopefully those ones will work better for me. And then this one I got from the library, and it's called The Last Murder at the End of the World. And this was an anticipated read of mine, but I'm kind of glad I didn't run out and buy it and that I got it from the library instead, because unfortunately this should have been a DNF, but for whatever reason I didn't DNF it. So this is more of a science fiction story in my opinion. Like, there is a murder mystery and it is a big part of the plot, but I feel like by and large this is more dystopian. So this is about the end of the world, as you can see, and everybody is holed up on this little island because there was this mist that apparently has these insects in them that would kill you if you go out into it. So it sounds very much like The Mist from Stephen King, but they put up these big walls, and there's only 3 scientists left, and their job is to maintain these walls and maintain a society. And so the burden's kind of been on them, and they perform these experiments that the people don't really understand, or they don't get to be a part of. They don't know what the scientists are doing, but they kind of just have carte blanche to do whatever they want because they're the scientists. And so they have a curfew, but they have, I don't remember if it's like a wristband or an implant of some kind, but for whatever reason, at this curfew, whatever they have can actually physically just drop them. Like, oh, it's 9 o'clock, boop. And wherever they are, they just fall asleep until morning. So they have this curfew to be in their beds, so they're not out wandering the streets when they pass out, especially because if you fall, you're going to hurt yourself. But anyway, sometimes they would wake up though the next morning and they'd have bruises and they'd have cuts that they don't have any remembrance of getting, because obviously something is going on while they're sleeping, which is probably the scientists doing their experiments that they can't know anything about. So anyways, I mostly read this because I liked the science fiction elements and I wanted to know the mystery surrounding that. But a large portion of this book was about the murder mystery because one of the scientists gets killed. And apparently because of her death, the walls have come down, and so the mist is like on its way. They have like 72 hours before the mist reaches them or something. But I just didn't care about who killed the scientist, to be honest. I could care less. I just wanted to know the mystery behind the dystopian stuff and why society is the way it is. And I was enjoying the world building a lot in the beginning, but yeah, I just got so bogged down with this murder mystery, and I didn't really get close or attached to any of the characters. And then when I finally started getting some of the reveals for the twists, I was just kind of like, eh. So by the end, I was just like, I should DNF this book. It just was not worth my time. I was so excited for this book, but it just really didn't work for me. But a science fiction book that did work for me is I also read The Family Experiment by John Marrs. And this is my first John Marrs book that I've read. I did attempt to read The Vacation, and I DNF'd that. It's the most boring, useless book I've ever read. I did not like that at all. But luckily, this one really worked for me. This was a 5 stars. Oh, I guess I didn't give a rating for Murder at the End of the World. I don't know, I guess 2 stars? Could be 1 star, but I did finish it and I did like the world building at the beginning, so yeah, I guess I'll just give it a generous 2 stars. So anyways, so this one was a 5 star for me. I really enjoyed it. It's in the future, and people that either can't have kids or it's too expensive to have kids had this reality TV show created where you could have a virtual child, and it would just be like any normal child. They made it super realistic, so you have like the weight of the child, you have the feel of its soft skin, all the smells, like everything that you would have with a real child is with this AI child. But they grow up super fast. So in 9 months, they'll be 18. So you'll have like a newborn, and then you'll have a toddler, then you'll have a child, and then you'll have a tween, and then you'll have a teenager, and then they're an adult. So like it leaps ahead a few years in their development. And so you start out, I think there was 11. There was 11 contestants, and they're all trying to be like the best parent, because people can watch the show 24/7, and they can give likes, they give like red hearts if they like what you're doing, and black hearts if they're not impressed with your parenting skills or whatever. And so if you are deemed the best parent by the end, then you can either opt to keep your AI child, or they'll give you the money to create a real family with like in vitro or something. So I don't know. I thought this was really interesting because even though you have a lot of POVs and a lot of things going on, I didn't feel too lost. In the beginning, some of the couples, I did kind of get confused, like who was who. Like, okay, is this couple this going on, or is it this couple? Like, I did get a little bit confused in the beginning until they started to wheedle themselves down to a more manageable set of characters. But I don't know, I just thought the concept was really fun, and I really liked how John Marrs would subtly put things that reminded you that you were in the future. I mean, obviously you knew you were in the future because of this reality TV thing with AI children and stuff. But he would put other things, like they would just be going throughout their day, and it would talk about self-moving cars, or it would talk about like a shower dryer, or like just different technologies that were subtly put in there that we obviously don't have now. And I thought that was really clever and fun. And then it also throughout the book had these segments where I don't know what you call them, like news things, or just like newspapers, or well, I mean, they probably don't have newspapers, but I don't know, like it would have, is AI children ethical or is it not? Or, people were outcrying this thing, or I feel like I'm babbling and I'm not making any sense. But there was just these segments that talked about the society and how they thought about things and things that were going on in the real world. And I just thought that was a really fun, neat insertion into the book, and just made it a little bit more immersive. And every couple had something going on that was interesting and intriguing. And I didn't know beforehand, because this is my first John Marrs book, but I think all of his science fiction books are connected, because it talked about things that would happen in the One and in the Passengers, and probably the Marriage Act too. I'm not sure, but it seems like it's all part of the same universe. I don't think it really spoils anything. It got close, I think, on the passengers to spoiler territory, but I don't think enough that I feel like betrayed and oh, now I was going to read that book and now I can't because it's spoiled. Like, I don't feel that way, but it did allude to quite a bit of things from the book The Passengers, so just be aware of that if you're like me and haven't read that book yet. But no, I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a good time. And then I read The Nature of Disappearing. And this one, I don't even know if I would consider this a thriller necessarily. It does have, I mean, I guess it would be more of like a mystery, but it's very, very character heavy. So just be aware of that if you're not into character heavy and character focused books. Because a lot of this was about the friendship between our main character and her best friend, who was the woman who went missing and that they're trying to find. And I really enjoyed this one. It wasn't like my favorite thing. It's not something I'm probably going to rave about. And honestly, the end was just okay. Like when I figured out the mystery, I was underwhelmed by it. But for the most part, I really enjoyed my time with this book. And I really liked the characters and I liked getting the background on her because it would go back and forth in time. So you would have the mystery in the current POV, and then you'd have a timeline in the past where it's showing their friendship and how they became friends and about her relationship with this man, a former boyfriend, who helps her try to track down her best friend. And so you also get to see their relationship in the past. So, anyways, I would probably give this 4 stars. And then I read The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center, and I really, really enjoyed this one. I'd give it a 4.5 because it wasn't quite perfect. There were certain things that annoyed me about it. But for the most part, I thought this was really fun. If you just want a fun, silly, not think about it rom com, this is a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it. And this is about a woman who is a screenwriter and she gets the opportunity to go work for her hero of a writer. She loves this man with a passion. She's read all his screenplays, even the ones that never made it to being a movie. And she's watched all of his movies and she just thinks he's brilliant. And she's so excited to help him because apparently he mostly does like gangster stuff or like macho movies, but he wanted to write, or no, he didn't want to. He wrote a rom com because he was trying to get a movie produced that nobody really wanted. And so one guy was like, well, my mistress really wants to be an actress in a movie, so write her a rom-com that she can star in, and then I will greenlight your screenplay for the mafia movie that you want. So he writes this rom-com, and it's abysmal, and it's terrible, and it's crappy. And so our main character, her friend, he's like his agent, I think. And so he's like, will you please go help this man write this screenplay because it needs to be rewritten and overhauled and he doesn't know how to write romantic comedies, so please help him out. So she's like, sure, that sounds like fun. I get paid, I get to write with my hero. She is apprehensive about going because she is the primary caregiver for her father, who was like in an accident. And so she's been taking care of her dad, but her sister steps in and was like, no, I can take care of him. It's okay. He'll be fine. Just go and do what you need to do. So after a decade of taking care of her father and doing nothing else, she finally gets the opportunity to go to LA and do this amazing thing. Well, when she shows up, she discovered that her hero didn't want her there, didn't know she was even coming, and was like, heck no, you are not coming. I'm not doing this. I don't care about the screenplay. I don't care if it's crappy because it's just a means to an end. Basically get out. And so she's so disappointed and so upset and embarrassed. But things go down and she ends up staying and they end up working on this screenplay together. And it's just a lot of fun. I just really enjoyed the characters and the situations. The one thing that does kind of bother me is I'm not really into like the silly, like slapstick stuff. We're doing line dancing and I accidentally kept bumping into you a bunch of times, or oh, I tripped and fell on you, or that stuff kind of aggravates me. And I know it's supposed to be like meta and, they very much know that it's silly and that it's like something that's in every rom-com, and they kind of poke fun at it. And so I do appreciate that. But even still, it still makes me roll my eyes. So I didn't care for that aspect, but everything else I really enjoyed. And I will say there's one thing at the end that I really didn't like because her and her sister get in a big fight. I won't tell you what it's about, but they get in this huge fight and they both say things that are almost unforgivable. Like some really harsh, harsh things were said in this conversation. But the thing that drove me crazy is my main character was all but her and she was mad at her sister and was like, I'm never talking to her again. You know, we're done. We're not sisters anymore. But then, like, eventually they do make up, but just the sister had to apologize. And then I was like, but what about you? You said some hurtful things too. You said some unforgivable things. She never apologizes. She never admits any fault. And that did not sit well with me. I did not like that they put all the blame on the sister, and the sister had to apologize, and then things were right. And she never took any responsibility for the things that she said that were hurtful. And yeah, I didn't like that. But other than that, I really enjoyed this one. How many times can I say that? But I did. I liked it. So 4.5 stars for this one. And then for my book club pick, they chose Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. And I started out really enjoying this one. I loved the main character and I especially loved her grandmother. They were both kind of sarcastic and interesting people and kind of sassy, and I really liked it. And I really liked the podcast element to this book. I know a lot of people are getting sick of that trope, but personally, this is only like the second book I've read with that element, so it didn't bother me at all. I actually quite enjoyed it. So this is about a woman who was accused of murdering her best friend, and then everybody thought that she did it, even though there wasn't enough evidence to convict her. And so she decided to move to LA to get away from all their glares and to get away from all of their judgment and different things. And so 5 years later, she comes back to town because her grandmother is having a birthday party. And she discovers that this man named Ben was doing a podcast about this crime that happened 5 years ago. He really wants to interview her and get her perspective. But the thing is, she has amnesia because that same night that her best friend was murdered, she also suffered a head injury. And she has no memory of what happened. And so she herself doesn't even know if she's guilty or not. And so she finally reluctantly decides to talk to him because she knows her grandmother really wants her to, because her grandmother is like the only one in town that believes that she wouldn't do that. Even her own parents think she's guilty. So she's like, okay, let's do this. You know, I'll do the interview, but I really don't remember anything. But, you know, I'll help you try and solve this murder because I myself would like to know what happened to my friend, even if it turns out that it's me. And so I really did enjoy that aspect, but at the same time, I really hate the amnesia trope. I just feel like it's a cop out and I just feel like it's too convenient because then it's like the whole book, don't remember, don't remember, don't remember. And then towards the end, when it's time to wrap things up and start doing the reveals and stuff, then all of a sudden, oh, I'm starting to remember what happened. Like, I don't know. It's just a little too convenient to me. I just don't like that trope. So I did enjoy this book, but I didn't necessarily care for that. I feel like it's an excuse machina in my opinion. And I do want to forewarn you that this book does have the F word a lot if that is something that you don't like in your books. And another thing that was kind of aggravating to me is literally every single character in this book is a cheater and slept with everybody else. Like everybody, there was like 8 different people in this book, and it's like, oh, they cheated, oh, they cheated, oh, they cheated, oh, that person cheated, and that person cheated, and it's just like, it was a lot. I was like, okay, we get it. This whole town just cheats on everybody and sleeps around all the time. Like, it was a little bit ridiculous in my opinion, like a little over the top. So I don't know. On the one hand, I really, really liked this, especially in the first half. But I don't know, it was kind of starting to lose me in the end. Like, not to the point where I ever felt like putting it down. Like, I never felt bored. But just like reflecting back on it, I was just like, maybe it's not as good as I initially thought it was. So I would still give this 4 stars, but it's definitely not a 5 star. And another thing which I thought was kind of funny is the author made the choice to put the name Lucy, which is our main character, at the beginning of every single chapter, which just seems weird to me because she's the only perspective. It's written in first person and you don't get a POV from anyone else. So I don't know why they felt the need to put Lucy at the beginning of every chapter. I know that's just like a nitpicky thing. As an author myself, I just thought that was a weird choice. But to each their own, I guess. And then the last book I read was Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. I absolutely love Riley Sager. He's a fantastic author. But I'm not going to tell you anything about this book because I actually have an entire video dedicated to Riley Sager coming out next week, and I will do a vlog of myself reading this book. So if you're interested to know how I feel about this book, go ahead and wait for next week's video. And then the last book I want to talk about is a book I got at the library. I take my kids there every Tuesday during the summer, and I just stumbled upon this children's book that caught my eye that I really wanted to check out. And it's called The Mutter Museum. And I discovered I had been saying that wrong. I always said the Mutter Museum, but it's wrong because it's German, and so it's actually the Mutter Museum. Didn't know that, so I did learn something reading this. Well, that's not the only thing I learned, but the Mutter Museum is in Philadelphia, which is on the other side of the country from where I live, so I've never been there, but I have heard of it, and so it was really fun and interesting to read this book and see what type of things are on display there. If you don't know what the Mutter Museum is, there was a college of physicians in Philadelphia, and they came together in the 1800s and formed a society of physicians that wanted to promote medical knowledge, basically. And so they had all these like specimens and stuff in their houses and in their practices. And so, like, I don't know, I think it was like 75 years later or something, there was a guy named Thomas Mutter, and he gave forth the money to start the museum and then donated all of his specimens to this museum of all the interesting medical oddities that have happened throughout the years. And I won't go into detail about it here, but there is some really interesting things that you can look up on your own if you're interested. But one thing I didn't know is that after Albert Einstein died, they actually have quite a few slides of his brain. I think the Mutter Museum itself has like 47 or 46 slim slices of his brain that they wanted to look at, see if there's anything special or unique about his brain patterns, to see if that's the reason why he was so smart, because, you know, everybody considers him to be one of the most genius people who ever lived, and so they wanted to see if there was something different and unique about his brain that proved, or that showed, I mean, why he was so smart. But so far they haven't discovered anything. He was just a smart guy. But anyways, I just found this fascinating, maybe a little bit morbid and macabre, but that's what I like. So yeah, it's interesting. I'll show you a couple of pictures. The first part is all like kids stuff, which is this little boy that's doing a tour of the museum and telling you what's in there. But then at the back they have some actual pictures. So yeah, I just thought it was really fun and entertaining. So that's all I have for you guys. Those are all the books I read in the month of June. Let me know if you read any of these books and what you thought about them in the comment section below. And if you haven't subscribed already, consider doing so. Hit that notification bell so that you'll never miss a video from me. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this video so I know which videos to continue to make, and we can become friends and talk about books. And I'll see you guys next time. See ya.